The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen silence like this. Not when the Krell Empire invaded the Rhodian systems. Not even when the Vexian warlords declared total annihilation of Sector 9. But today was different. The silence wasn't from fear. It was anticipation, thick and humming like static in the air. Every eye in the room, be it biological or synthetic, turned toward the entrance. The humans were coming. They were late. Purposefully late. Behind them, war still burned like a wildfire in dry grass. Systems fell, moons cracked. But humanity hadn't come to beg. They hadn't come with treaties or with shame, number. They were coming like thunder. "They're making a statement," muttered Councillor Xi of the Yalari swarm, his insectoid mandibles twitching nervously. Typical primitives, no decorum. Beside him, the Thaloon delegate said nothing. Her translucent skin shimmered with unease. Everyone remembered what the humans did to the Drex Armada. That fleet was supposed to be unbeatable, until Earth answered with fire and madness. The ornate doors hissed open. They didn't walk in with a parade or a peace envoy. 3 humans entered. That was all. No banners, no music, just 3 figures in military black, dusted with ash and blood. The tall one in the middle walked like he owned the stars. His face was half covered with a burn scar, and yet it was his eyes that unsettled everyone. Calm, cold, calculated. Like he had already judged every species in the room and found them lacking. Behind him, a woman with steel-gray hair and a limp carried a data tablet and what looked like a folded human flag. The third, a younger man, no older than 25 standard years, was armed. He didn't hide it. He wore a plasma rifle on his back, fully charged. The chamber shifted with discomfort. Weapons weren't allowed. But no one spoke. The lead human stepped onto the central platform, which hovered above the rest of the council like a throne for those who believed they had the right to speak. He looked down at the sea of delegates. "I'm Commander Elias Rourke, Terran Defense Forces," he said. His voice didn't echo. It cut. "I wasn't invited. Humanity never got a seat at this table." He paused. "But we showed up anyway." A murmur spread like disease among the delegates. The Ixari delegate, a being made of glowing crystals, rose in protest. "This is a breach of protocol. You cannot just arrive here armed, unannounced." "Sit down." Rourke's words weren't loud, but something in them made even the air obey. The Ixari delegate lowered itself. Elias continued. "For 3 galactic cycles, we asked for help. Not aid, respect. You ignored us. You said we were newborns, unfit for council matters, violent by nature. Funny how you say that while hiding behind fleets and pointing guns at each other." His voice was calm. Too calm. "We warned you. The Drex were coming. We offered cooperation. You laughed. They hit us first. We didn't cry. We didn't beg. We hit back." The woman beside him unfurled the flag. It was torn, stained with dark patches of red, human blood. "This came from the Battle of Orion's Reach," she said quietly. 17 billion lives, mostly ours. We held the line." No one in the chamber moved. "You call us violent?" Elias said. "You're damn right, but we use violence to protect our own. We don't start wars. We finish them." A low hum began. The data transmission from Earth had arrived, a full holographic recording of the human Drex war. Councillors gasped as they saw orbital bombardments, planetary defense grids collapsing, humans fighting in zero gravity with nothing but grit and makeshift weapons. There were no glorious speeches, no mercy, just a species fighting extinction with everything it had. "And now," Rourke said, his tone shifting like a storm front, "we're not asking to join the council. We're telling you. He looked each delegate in the eye. "We are here, not because you allowed it, but because we survived everything you didn't." Behind him, the young soldier removed his rifle and laid it on the floor with a soft clink. "We bring peace," Elias said, "but understand this. Earth will never kneel again, not to the Drex, not to you." He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. "The war's not over. The Drex are still coming. But next time, if you want to survive, you'll follow our lead." And just like that, the humans walked out, leaving a chamber full of silence, smoke, and the heavy sound of reality sinking in. The silence lingered long after the humans left. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. No one dared to speak first, as if breaking the quiet might draw that same wrath upon them. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council wasn't the most powerful force in the galaxy. That title now belonged to the ones who just left the room without permission. In a back chamber, Counselor Cyril of the Thaloon Confederacy stared at the replay of Elias Rourke's speech. She watched it 3 times, each time slower than before. The humans hadn't brought an army. They had brought something worse. Certainty. She tapped her comms. "Send word to the homeworld. Begin immediate analysis on Terran military growth. And get me their war logs from Orion's Reach. All of them." "But Counselor," her aide buzzed, "accessing human combat data is nearly impossible. They've encrypted it with quantum keys. Breaking it would take years." Cyril's expression hardened. "Then we better start now." Elsewhere in the Council spire, a different reaction was unfolding. Ambassador Kurath of the Krell Dominion was laughing, loudly. The sound of a Krell laugh was like a meat grinder filled with gravel, but that didn't stop him from enjoying it. "Oh, this is rich," he bellowed, slamming one of his massive hands on the table. "Did you see their eyes? The cold? The fury? That, my friends, is a species ready to dominate." His adjutant tilted its head. "Should we consider an alliance?" Kurath snarled. "Not alliance, observation. Humanity is useful, like a loaded weapon. But you don't hand a loaded weapon to a child. You watch, you wait, and when they turn the barrel on you, then you decide how much trust was worth." Across the galaxy, word spread fast. Even species that had never attended the council now tuned in. Pirate lords in the Kellan expanse whispered about human tactics. Smugglers discussed the sudden, terrifying efficiency of Terran warships. On mining colonies and distant moons, small children replayed Rourke's speech as a lesson in strength. Back on Earth, the home front was burning. Not literally, but close. The victory at Orion's Reach came with a cost no one could truly process. 17 billion lives. Most of them civilians caught in Drex firestorms. Cities gone. Oceans poisoned. The Terran government had tried to keep the images under wraps, but grief leaks. Rage does too. In the underground shelter city of New Sydney, Rourke walked through a crowd of survivors. No guards, no fanfare. Just the boots of a soldier who never truly came home. A child stopped him. She couldn't have been older than 7. She clutched a stuffed animal burned on one side and looked up at him with wide, hollow eyes. "Did we win?" she asked. Rourke crouched. He wanted to lie. He really did. Instead he said, "Not yet. But we will." The girl nodded like she understood more than any child should. Afterward, Rourke met with his inner circle. Generals, fleet commanders, intelligence officers. The room was a former hospital basement. Now it was command central for what was left of Earth's top brass. "Status?" he asked. General Mora, a woman with a steel plate covering half her skull, replied. "The Council's a mess. Half of them fear us. The other half want to recruit us for their own wars. But the Drex aren't done. We have confirmed fleets gathering in the shadow zones of Sector 12. "How long?" Rourke asked. 3 weeks, maybe less. Admiral Singh, the youngest fleet admiral in human history, leaned forward. We can't defend Earth again, not like last time. But if we go there, if we take the fight to them, we might not have to. A long silence followed. Then Rourke nodded. Prepare the offensive. Mobilize the Orion-class carriers. And I want intel on any species willing to fight with us. Not above us. Not for us. With us. He looked around the room. We gave the Council a warning. Now let's give the Drex a message. And somewhere, deep in the cold void between stars, a new Terran fleet began to awaken. Quietly, like a storm pulling breath before it breaks. The Orion-class carriers drifted like ghosts through the void, engines on minimal output to avoid detection. Sleek, dark, and massive, these ships were humanity's final answer to extinction. Each one carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. But what made them terrifying wasn't just the weapons. It was the crew. Veterans, survivors, people who had already lost everything and had no intention of losing again. Commander Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, his eyes fixed on the star map floating before him. Red dots blinked in growing clusters, Drex fleets assembling, waiting to strike. But now humanity wouldn't wait. "We strike first," he muttered. His second-in-command, Captain Leona Vex, nodded. "All fleets report ready. Stealth systems holding. Operation Widow's Bite is greenlit." "Then light the fuse," Rourke said. Back on the council world of Gallus Prime, news of humanity's impending offensive reached the chambers like a tidal wave. The Yalari delegates hissed in outrage. The Vossian diplomats demanded emergency hearings. Even the usually neutral Thaloon issued a formal statement of deep concern. But concern wasn't action. "They're provoking the Drex," Councillor Z whined. "This could destabilize half the quadrant." Councillor Sarrell leaned forward, eyes sharp. "They're not provoking anyone. They're surviving, something most of us haven't had to do in centuries." Z scoffed. "We should sanction them." "And do what?" Sarrell snapped. "Fine them? Embargo them? They don't trade with us. They don't need us. We had our chance to work with Earth, and we spat in their face. Now we either get out of their way, or we get trampled." Across the galaxy, other races were starting to make choices. The Martaxi nomads, long isolated and fiercely independent, sent a message of solidarity to Earth. "We recognize strength. We recognize pain. You are not alone." The Korgan mercenary clans, who once refused Terran contracts, offered free services to human commanders. Free. That had never happened before. And even within the Drex Empire, something was shifting. In the outer territories, rebel factions, once too weak to defy the Drex war machine, now whispered about the humans. They passed around decrypted clips of Terran soldiers walking through burning cities, pulling civilians from rubble with bare hands. They played audio of Rourke's speech, like it was scripture. "If they can fight the Drex," one rebel commander said, "maybe we can too." But while hope stirred across the stars, vengeance brewed in silence. The Drex warlords were not accustomed to resistance, let alone defeat. The loss at Orion's Reach was not just a military failure. It was a personal insult to their supremacy. In the cold halls of their capital ship, bloodlit sovereign, High Marshal Krax surveyed the reports. He watched the footage of Terran forces overrunning his elite units. He studied their weapons, their movements, their rage. "They are flawed," he growled. "Weak flesh and broken worlds, but they fight like cornered beasts." "Permission to retaliate?" asked his strategist, a multi-limbed creature named Vaz. "Retaliate?" Krax's eyes glowed. "Number we exterminate." He tapped the star map. "Target their outer colonies, scorch them, leave nothing breathing, then we go for Earth. And this time, no survivors." The Drex armada began to move, engines roaring like demons set loose. But humanity was ready. Inside the TDS Retribution, Rourke received the intel within minutes. The Drex weren't hiding anymore. They were coming fast, direct, full of pride and fury. "Just as we wanted," he whispered. Captain Vex smirked. "You think they've fallen for it?" "They're Drex," he said. "They can't not fall for it." The Terran fleet scattered, not in retreat, but in strategy. Ghost ships, trap zones, cloaked mines disguised as derelict transports. Every inch of space between Earth and the Drex invasion path had been turned into a graveyard waiting to happen. Rourke turned to his crew. "They think we're prey. Let's make them choke on it." As the countdown to war began again, every human alive, whether in bunker, ship, or refugee shelter, felt it. Not fear. Resolve. This time, humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance. The trap was set. In the black stretch of Sector 12, where starlight barely reached and debris fields drifted like frozen graves, the Drex fleet advanced with brutal confidence. Hundreds of warships, massive, spiked monstrosities powered by fusion cores the size of buildings, swept through space in formation, shields humming, weapons charged. But what they didn't realize was that they were already inside the kill box. The TDS Retribution floated dark and silent behind a shattered moon, one of many human warships hidden in the void. Power levels were at minimal, heat signatures masked. Every crew member was quiet, eyes glued to their displays, breaths shallow like prey waiting for the right moment to strike back. "Contact," whispered Captain Vex. "Drex heavy cruisers entering primary field." "Let them come," Rourke said, voice low but sharp. "We want them to feel safe." All across the sector, similar whispers passed between human vessels. Not one command barked. Not one order shouted. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. The Drex moved closer. Their scanners showed nothing but wreckage and dead systems. To them, this was just a cleanup mission. A final burn, and then... The stars exploded. A ripple of energy erupted from a derelict mining barge. Except it wasn't a barge. It was a converted EMP drone ship loaded with anti-shield disruptors. In seconds, 20 Drex ships lost power, flickered, and went dark. Before they could respond, hell fell on them from above. Human destroyers dropped out of stealth and formation like wolves on a wounded herd. Railguns fired tungsten rods at supersonic speeds, punching through hulls like butter. Plasma bursts arced in elegant surgical bursts. No screams. No mercy. From the bridge of the Retribution, Rourke stood still, eyes tracking the chaos as if it were a dance he had memorized. "Strike Teams Alpha through Delta, deploy," he said calmly. "Cripple their engines, leave a few alive." Drop ships launched. Sleek and black, they dove through Drex formations and latched onto enemy hulls like parasites. Inside, human marines, heavily armored, heavily scarred, breached Drex vessels with shaped charges and stormed inside, hand to hand. Blade to claw, blood to blood. In one such battle aboard a Drex battlecruiser, Sergeant Naira Wells charged through the smoke, her sidearm empty, her face cut from cheek to jaw. A Drex warrior lunged, snarling with 3 serrated arms, but she dodged under it and drove a combat knife into its throat. "You invaded the wrong planet," she hissed, yanking the blade sideways. Behind her, her squad sealed the command chamber, planted explosives, and retreated. 30 seconds later, the entire ship tore apart from within. The battle lasted 13 minutes. When it was over, 90 Drex warships were wreckage. 23 human ships were damaged, 3 lost. Casualties. Minimal, considering what they'd faced. The survivors floated helplessly, escape pods blinking in the dark, and Rourke made sure every pod was pulled aboard. He wanted witnesses. On the Retribution, they gathered them in the hangar bay. Dozens of Drex officers, bound and defiant. Their eyes burned with hate, but their pride had cracks now. Rourke stepped forward. No speech, no warning. He simply played a hologram. It was footage of the colony on Carthos 4, the one the Drex had incinerated. Civilians screaming as firestorms engulfed buildings. Children buried under rubble. Medics dying with patients in their arms. The Drex prisoners watched in silence. Some growled. Others looked away. "You thought we'd forget that?" Rourke asked. No answer. "You thought we'd beg?" He stepped closer to one of the high-ranking Drex officers, a general based on the ceremonial armor. "You don't understand us yet," Rourke said. "You thought we were like the others, fragile, disorganized, merciful." He leaned in. "But we're the monsters you made." Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving the Drex to sit in silence as the screams of their own war echoed around them. That night, across every Terran fleet, there were no celebrations, no songs, just silence. Because they knew this was only the beginning. Rourke didn't sleep that night. He stood alone in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the wreckage of the Drex fleet drift through space. It looked peaceful from here, almost beautiful. Burned-out husks of warships, their twisted metal bodies lit softly by dying stars. But he knew better. Every one of those ships had once carried soldiers who laughed when they torched civilian colonies, who called it cleansing, who posted trophies of Terran skulls on their black market channels. Now they floated like corpses in a forgotten graveyard, and even that didn't feel like enough. "You did what had to be done," said a voice behind him. He didn't turn. "Did I?" Captain Leona Vex stepped up beside him, her reflection flickering faintly in the glass. "They butchered our people. You hit them back harder. That's what war is." "No," Rourke said. "That's what they think war is. For us, war was survival. But I think we're starting to enjoy it." Vex didn't respond, and that silence said enough. In the following days, Terran forces advanced quickly. Without their fleet, Drex outer colonies fell like dominoes. One by one, human strike teams landed, liberated prisoners, destroyed weapons caches, and pulled out before reinforcements could arrive. Every victory was a message. Every burning Drex symbol was a declaration. Humanity does not kneel. But even as the Drex crumbled on the outside, they rotted faster on the inside. Inside the Empire's core systems, rebellions spread like fire. Species long enslaved under Drex rule, Karnans, Julari, even Drex defectors, took up arms. They didn't fight for humanity. They fought because, for the first time in centuries, someone had punched the monster in the mouth and lived to tell the tale. On the liberated moon of Chaval, an underground broadcast aired across hidden channels. A Karanan leader in cracked armor spoke directly to the camera. Earth didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for treaties. They acted. And in their fire, we found hope. The Drex can bleed. Let's make them drown. Rourke watched the broadcast from orbit. He should have felt pride, maybe even triumph, but all he felt was exhaustion. The cost weighed on him every minute. The faces of the dead never left him. Soldiers, civilians, allies who trusted him. Some nights, he saw their eyes in the metal walls around him. Some nights, he saw her, Elena, his daughter. She died in the first strike, one of the many wiped from existence when the Drex glassed New Boston. He hadn't even found her body, just a necklace, charred, half melted. And when he touched it now, alone in his quarters, he wasn't a commander. He was just a father with nothing left but fury. A soft chime broke the silence. Vex again. "They've responded," she said. "The Galactic Council." He blinked. "Responded? To what?" She hesitated. "They want to negotiate. That made him turn. Negotiate what? We didn't ask for anything. They're proposing a ceasefire, not with the Drex, with us. The word burned in his mouth. A ceasefire? Are they afraid we'll go further? They're not just afraid, Vex said. They're terrified. Rourke leaned back, eyes cold. They sat silent while Earth burned. They ignored our pleas. They watched as children screamed under firestorms. And now they want to talk? They're offering council seats, trade routes, military support, everything they withheld before. He laughed once, bitterly. We bleed, and then we're valuable. Isn't that the story of humanity in every damn corner of the universe? What do we tell them? Rourke didn't speak right away. Then, slowly, he said, Tell them, Earth will attend their council again. Vex raised a brow. Under what terms? No terms, Rourke said. We'll go as guests, as equals. He paused, eyes narrowing. But we'll arrive late. Let them wait. Let them sweat. Let them remember that war echoes behind us. He stood, back straight, voice firm. And this time, we're bringing ghosts. The Galactic Council chamber on Gallus Prime had never been this silent. Not during the secession of the Threx Union. Not during the outbreak of the Bio-Wars. Not even during the collapse of the Lurvan Treaty. But today, silence wasn't diplomatic. It was fear. The humans were coming. Every dignitary, ambassador, and high-ranking official knew it. They didn't say it aloud, but it passed between them like an unspoken prayer. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive upstarts from a fringe planet, was arriving as a force no one could ignore anymore. They had burned through the Drex fleets. They had turned a war of survival into a campaign of dominance. And now they were showing up at the heart of galactic politics, not as supplicants, but as a reminder. At the central podium, Council Speaker Thalvon adjusted his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. Let us maintain order. The Terran delegation is en route. Let us show unity. But unity didn't come easy when the walls themselves trembled with the sound of Terran dreadnoughts descending into orbit. And then the door opened. First came the Marines, heavily armored, weapons holstered but visible, eyes scanning every shadow. No salute, no smiles. They were not here for ceremony. They were here for security. Next came the diplomats, not bureaucrats, not negotiators in soft robes or ceremonial silks. These were former officers, ex-soldiers, survivors, hardened men and women with Terran fleet medals still pinned to their chests. Their presence said everything. We are not here for approval. And then Commander Elias Rourke entered. Black uniform. No medals, no rank insignia. Just a scar running down the left side of his face and the cold, unreadable stare of someone who had walked through hell and come back holding the devil's skull. Every eye turned. Even Councillor Cyril, the one who had supported Earth from the beginning, sat frozen as Rourke's boots echoed across the polished floor. He didn't bow. He didn't offer thanks. He simply stepped to the center, looked around, and said, "You called us here." Speak. Speaker Thalvon cleared his throat again, this time more shakily. Commander Rourke, it is our understanding that hostilities between your forces and the Drex Empire have reached a volatile escalation. The Council believes it is in everyone's interest to stop us, Rourke interrupted flatly. You want to stop us. Thalvon hesitated. To contain the damage. Rourke's jaw clenched. Damage? You watched our worlds burn and called it a border dispute. You labeled refugee cries as unverified distress signals. You ignored every report we sent, every plea. Now that we've hit back, you call it damage. A Vossian delegate shifted in his seat. You've destabilized the balance of power. There's no balance, Rourke snapped. There's predators and prey, For a long time, humanity was prey, but we're done bleeding. The chamber went cold. Then, slowly, Rourke opened a data slate and transmitted a projection to the center of the room. It was a list. Drex colonies. Every known system. Beside each name, a red icon. The room shifted uncomfortably. "These are Drex strongholds," he said. "Factories, shipyards, breeding camps, sites of war crimes. We're going to dismantle them, all of them," a Julari delegate hissed. "You mean to erase them?" "No," Rourke said. "We mean to end them." Speaker Thalvon raised his hands. "Surely there is a diplomatic path." "Diplomacy died when the Drex incinerated children's hospitals," Rourke growled. "Now we show them what death really looks like." "But—" Rourke stepped forward. Just one step. But the movement made half the chamber tense. "You had your chance," he said. "You chose silence. We chose war. And now you want to leash us." He looked around slowly. "No." He tapped his slate. A second file loaded, this time showing fleet movements, Terran alliances, rebel factions joining the cause, mercenaries signing on, former slaves rising with human-supplied weapons. "The galaxy is changing," Rourke said, "and we're not asking for permission anymore." Then he stepped back. The chamber was frozen. Not one word spoken. And Rourke, without another glance, turned and walked out. Behind him, the human delegation followed, silent, unified, unbreakable. Back on the Retribution, as the Terran fleet began to rise from the planet's orbit, Vex approached him on the bridge. "They didn't say a word after you left." "They will," Rourke said. "Eventually." She nodded. "And if they don't?" He looked out into the stars, voice low and final. "Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught the Drex." The war changed after Gallus Prime, not because the Council passed new sanctions or declared a ceasefire, not because the Drex sued for peace or asked for terms. Number. What changed was fear, and who held it. For centuries, the Drex Empire had ruled with terror. They conquered planets with firestorms and chemical clouds, razed cities to ash, and enslaved whole species beneath their clawed boots. Fear was their weapon. But now? Now, fear had a new name. Humanity. The campaign shifted into something uglier, bloodier. Terran forces didn't just strike Drex targets, they hunted them. Every known prison camp was raided, every bio-research lab sterilized, every general, admiral, and governor responsible for the war crimes catalogued by Earth was marked. No court, no trial, just justice. They called it the List. And Rourke made sure it was public. Every name, every face, every date and place of atrocity. The message was clear. There is nowhere in this galaxy you can hide where we won't find you. At first, the Drex resisted. Hard. In system after system, they threw everything they had at the humans. Bioweapons, stealth cruisers, even suicide fleets. But nothing worked, because the humans weren't playing by old rules. They learned faster, adapted quicker, fought like cornered animals with nothing to lose, and everything to avenge. One night, in the ruined Drex capital of Balkar, a special ops team led by Sergeant Naira Wells breached the old High Command vault. What they found wasn't gold or tech. It was files. Archives from decades of Drex domination. Files on slavery, torture, secret deals with council species who had quietly profited off Drex conquests. And those files. They were sent to every corner of the galaxy. Suddenly, it wasn't just humans fighting. It was everyone the Drex had wronged. Former Drex allies turned their backs. Mercenary factions defected. Even some of the younger Drex, those born during the war, began to question the Empire's lies. Inside the Terran fleet, the tone shifted too. The hunger for vengeance began to hollow into something colder, something heavier. Not everyone celebrated the killings. Not every soldier could sleep at night. Rourke noticed it most in the eyes of his crew. They didn't speak of the dead anymore. Didn't toast victories, just long stares, mechanical movements, rage slowly turning into emptiness. On the Retribution, Vex cornered him in the command briefing room. "We're winning," she said, "but we're not living. Not anymore." Rourke didn't look up from his reports. "You think I don't see it?" she pressed. "The way they move like ghosts? The way you haven't slept in days?" He finally looked at her. "We're making sure this never happens again." "At what cost?" He said nothing. She stepped closer. "You're turning us into them, Elias." That made him flinch, but only for a second. Then he stood, voice low and sharp. "They came to our world. They butchered our people. They burned our homes. And the galaxy watched. If we stop now, if we soften, they'll do it again. Someone always will." She stared at him for a long moment. "Then what happens when there's no one left to fight?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. Out in the stars, the final phase of the war was beginning. The Drek's homeworld, their last stronghold, their fortress, their origin. He could already hear the orders being prepped, the fleets moving, the orbital stations being scouted. But deep down, beneath the layers of steel, scars, and resolve, Rourke felt something else. Doubt. Not about victory. Victory was guaranteed, but about what would be left of them when it was over. Because in every war, there's a moment when the hunter looks in the mirror and sees the monster staring back. And maybe, just maybe, that moment was closer than anyone wanted to admit. The skies above Drexar Prime looked like the end of time. A boiling storm of ships, lasers, kinetic missiles, and falling debris churned in orbit. Terran dreadnoughts ripped through the final line of defense like gods wielding thunder. Drek's defense platforms cracked apart in nuclear bursts. Escape pods scattered like ants, many of them vaporized before they could even clear the atmosphere. Below, the planet burned. Cities once declared unconquerable lay in ruin. Statues of Drek's emperors, who once fed prisoners to beasts for sport, crumbled under orbital strikes. Entire regiments of elite Drek's shock troops were overwhelmed by rebel factions armed with Terran rifles and decades of fury. It wasn't just a military campaign. It was a reckoning. On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Elias Rourke stood watching it all through the forward viewport. No satisfaction, no pride, just silence. He had given the order hours ago. No survivors in high command bunkers. The rest would be given the chance to surrender once the symbol of Drek's power was erased forever. And now, the bunker was breached. "Sir," came a voice from the comms. It was Sergeant Naira Wells, Ground Team Alpha. "We've secured the last target. Primary confirmed dead, executed by his own guards. The Empire, it's done." Rourke nodded, barely emotion. "You did well, Sergeant." But she didn't disconnect. Her voice, usually steel, cracked. "Sir, there's something else. You need to see it." 2 hours later, Rourke was in the ruins of the Drek's Central Command vault. The walls were blackened with fire. The ceiling collapsed in places, but the data cores still glowed faintly. Wells led him past a row of containment cells, tiny, dark, quiet. He stopped. Inside were children, not human, Dreks, small, sickly, barely clothed, eyes wide with terror. "We found dozens," Wells said softly. "Half of them experimented on, augmented, conditioned for suicide missions against us. The other half, I don't even know." Rourke stared at them. One child, barely old enough to stand, clutched a broken ration pack like it was a doll. "These aren't soldiers," he muttered. "No, sir." He stepped back, as if the walls themselves were collapsing in on him. This was who we were fighting, and now we've become the thing they feared." Wells looked at him. What do we do? For the first time in months, Rourke had no order, no protocol, just a broken, flickering sense of clarity. He knelt in front of the nearest child, reached into his jacket and slowly handed over a protein bar. The child flinched, then hesitantly took it. A second later, the others swarmed him, not with fear, but hunger and trust. "They're not our enemies," he whispered. "Not yet." Back on the Retribution, the announcement came through. The Galactic Council had convened. In a unanimous vote, they had declared the Drex Empire disbanded. All of its territories were to be split among liberated species. War crime tribunals would begin immediately, and Earth was granted not just a council seat, it was given a veto, the strongest voice in the room. Rourke stood in the council hall a week later, staring at the sea of representatives. He didn't wear a weapon, no armor, just a simple dark suit, a silver pendant in his palm, Elena's necklace, cleaned and whole. He spoke only once. "We didn't come to rule," he said, his voice steady. "We came to survive. But survival became revenge, and revenge nearly became genocide." He let the silence breathe. "Let history record this as the day we stopped, before we became what we fought, before we lost what made us human." And with that, he walked away. No applause, just silence. Later that night, he stood on a quiet ridge outside the rebuilt colony of New Boston. The stars were clear. The sky, finally, wasn't burning. Captain Vex joined him. "They're rebuilding," she said. "Everywhere. Even Drexar. They're sending doctors, engineers, teachers." Rourke didn't answer. "They're following your example," she added. He looked at her then, tired but peaceful. "No," he said. "They're doing better. That's the point." Far above them, Terran ships began to return home. Their war was over. And humanity? Humanity didn't conquer the stars. They survived them. They changed them. And for the first time since the first Drex ship darkened Earth's sky, they could finally breathe. Even if the echoes of war still whispered in the silence, they would never forget. But they would never be prey again. The stars above burned like scattered fireflies, cold and indifferent to the chaos unraveling in the void. Space, that endless black ocean, had become a battlefield. Again. Around the broken remains of planet Virelis 9, 10 massive hunter ships floated in silent menace, surrounding the small, dented alien freighter that barely had enough power to keep its lights on. Inside the ship, the Quarnicks huddled together. Gray-skinned, thin-limbed creatures with bioluminescent eyes, they weren't warriors. They were workers, builders, thinkers. They didn't understand war, not really. And yet, here they were, breathing sharp gasps of fear into recycled air while their ship's AI calmly reported the obvious. "We are surrounded. They have armed plasma cannons. We will not survive the next strike." The youngest among them, Kel, trembled as a voice, half static, half fury, crackled through the comms. "This is Commander Rex Jorvan of the United Terran Dominion. You are trespassing in restricted space. Power down and surrender, or be cleansed." Cleansed, a word humans used when they didn't want to call it murder. The Quarnicks didn't reply. Their translator had failed hours ago. All they could do was stare at the cold stars and hope for something. Anything. A miracle, perhaps. And then it came. At first it was just a blip, one single engine flare in the distance, not a hunter ship, smaller, sleeker, moving faster than it should, like it didn't care that it was diving straight into a death zone. Commander Jorvan's voice returned, this time confused. "Unidentified vessel, this is restricted space. State your identity and stand down immediately." Silence. The small ship kept moving. Then a flicker on all frequencies, like someone hacking into the entire network. A voice, rough and sharp like gravel on steel, blasted through. "Stand down! I'm just getting started." Jorvin's eyes narrowed in his command chair. "Who the hell is that?" The small ship screeched to a halt just between the hunter ships and the Quarnik freighter. Its hull was patched with burn scars, its cannons mismatched like they were bolted on from salvage yards. But the name across the side was unmistakable. The Hollow Star, and only one man flew that ship. "No," whispered one of the Terran officers. "He's dead. He was supposed to be dead." The Hollow Star turned. Cannons charged. Its pilot, Ronan Vale, once a decorated war hero, now a ghost in the Dominion's blacklist, was alive, and he'd just chosen sides. Inside the Quarnik ship, Kel watched the bright shape hover in front of them like a shield. The ship's AI whispered in awe. "Unidentified vessel has activated all weapons. It is defending us." Jorvin's voice returned, this time filled with venom. "Ronan Vale, you traitor. This is your last warning. Stand down." Another silence. And then, "I didn't come here to talk, Jorvin. I came to feed you fire." The Hollow Star opened fire. The first hunter ship didn't even see it coming. One precise shot to the core, and it erupted into a burst of flame and shrapnel. The others scattered, caught off guard, their ranks broken by disbelief more than strategy. Ronan Vale moved like a ghost through fire. His ship rolled, dived, soared, tearing into the Dominion fleet like a man possessed. The Quarniks could only watch, mouths open, as the very species that had threatened them now fought for them, with a fury even the stars couldn't ignore. In the command ship, Jorvin clenched his jaw. Send everything, wipe him out. But it was too late. Ronan Vale was here, and when he fought, he didn't fight to survive. He fought to burn. The debris from the first destroyed hunter ship hadn't even cooled before Ronan Vale carved through the second. Plasma rounds lit the darkness in vicious blue arcs, slicing across the command decks of ships that were supposed to be untouchable. They called them Hunter-class destroyers, machines of war engineered to crush rebellions and incinerate threats before they took root. But none of them were prepared for him. Inside the Hollow Star, Ronan moved with mechanical precision. One hand on the thruster, the other flicking across a panel of cracked screens and patched-up code. He'd rebuilt this ship from ruin, just like he'd rebuilt himself. The Dominion had left him to rot after the Drazul Wars, disavowed, dishonored, and forgotten. They thought they'd buried him in the rubble of politics. They should have burned the body. The Quarniks watched in stunned silence from their failing freighter. Some had begun to whisper in their native tongue. Koranik Vel. It meant something like Firewalker or War Ghost, a being that rose in flame to punish the unjust. Kel leaned against the glass, his fingers trembling as he watched the human ship dodge another barrage with terrifying grace. "Why? Why is he helping us?" he asked quietly. No one had an answer. Back aboard the Dominion command ship Red Talon, Jorvin was fuming. His face was pale with rage, his officers shouting over one another in panic. "He's targeting weak points, sir. Precision strikes, like he knows our layouts." "Of course he knows," Jorvin roared. "He built half of them." That was the part no one ever talked about. Before Ronan Vale became a problem, he was the problem solver. The man who'd trained Dominion strike pilots. The man who'd drawn up half the blueprints for their high-speed tactical formations. And now, that knowledge was killing them, one ship at a time. "Reroute auxiliary power to shields. Flank him now," Jorvin barked. But the flanking maneuver never completed. Vale anticipated it before they even made the call. The Hollow Star pivoted, spun in a wide arc, and blasted a hunter ship's engine core so hard it shattered like glass under a hammer. A dozen escape pods shot from the wreckage, twinkling in space like metal tears. Ronan didn't shoot the pods. He didn't have to. His message was clear. This fight wasn't against the people who followed orders. It was against the monsters who gave them. Inside the hollow star, the cockpit lit up with an incoming transmission. Not from the Dominion, not from the Quarnix. A private channel. Encrypted. Ronan answered it without saying a word. A face flickered to life on the screen. Female, scarred, and sharp-eyed. Captain Naira Tess. Dominion deserter. Ex-ally. Ex-lover. "I told you not to come back here," she said, voice low. "And I told you they'd start killing civilians again," Ronan replied. "They always do. I just thought it'd take longer." She hesitated. "They'll brand you a terrorist, again." "They already did." His eyes narrowed. "This time, I earn it." The call ended. Back on the Quarnix ship, systems began to spark and die. Air filters slowed. Emergency lights flickered. They were suffocating. And they knew it. Kel stumbled to the console, tapping uselessly at buttons, when the screen buzzed and lit up. A single message in Galactic Basic. Dock. Now. Outside, the hollow star had lowered its shield, hovering close enough for an emergency link-up. The Quarnix ship was too damaged to resist. They latched on like a child to a mother's arm, desperate for breath. Inside, Ronan was already sealing airlocks, rerouting oxygen, doing a dozen things he shouldn't have cared about. But he did. Not because they were aliens, not because he owed them anything. Because, once upon a time, he saw what happened to the innocent when good men stayed silent. Not again. "System stabilized," the hollow star's AI chirped. "Refugees secured. 3 hunter ships remain." Ronan smiled. "Let's finish the welcome party." Outside, Dominion reinforcements were arriving. Inside, Ronan Vale was already turning his ship toward the new targets. And the fire was just getting started. The hollow star roared through the wreckage like a shark through bloodied water. Every movement was deliberate, every shot unforgiving. The Dominion's ships, massive and glittering with tech, suddenly looked slow, clumsy, like kings who'd never known how to fight without their armies. 3 hunter ships remained, but reinforcements were blinking into the region like an infection spreading across a wound. Behind Ronan, the Quarnix survivors sat in stunned silence, cramped inside the narrow hold of the hollow star. Their skin glowed dimly under emergency lighting, their breath still shaky as they processed what had just happened. None of them had ever seen death so closely. None of them had ever seen mercy delivered in such violent fire. Kel sat on the cold floor, knees to his chest, eyes locked on the screen that showed the battle raging outside. His heart thudded wildly in his chest. "I thought humans wanted us dead," he whispered. Ronan heard it. His voice came through the speaker overhead, gruff and tired. "They do. Most of them. But I don't work for most of them anymore." Kel didn't know what that meant, but it sounded like truth. Not the polished kind the Dominion broadcasted to the galaxy, but the bitter, jagged kind you only found in people who'd seen too much. Back on the Dominion flagship Red Talon, Commander Jorvin was in full lockdown mode. His face had lost its color, and his orders were sharper now. Desperate, even. "Where the hell are those backup cruisers?" he snapped. "ETA 90 seconds, sir. Interceptor wings are en route." Jorvin leaned on the console, sweat on his brow. He couldn't believe it. 1 man. 1 ship. And yet the hollow star was turning their fleet into scrap metal. "This is a goddamn embarrassment," he muttered. An officer near him cleared his throat. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" Jorvin shot him a glare. "You're about 5 ships too late for protocol, Lieutenant. Say it." He's not fighting like a madman. He's fighting like someone who knows exactly where we're weakest. And you think I don't know that? Jorvin barked. You think I don't know what we turned him into? The bridge went quiet. Jorvin stared at the screen. At the chaos, the hollow star looping, dancing, cutting through flanks like it had rehearsed it 1,000 times. He was Dominion, Jorvin muttered. Now he's a weapon we can't control. Just then, one of the remaining hunter ships managed a lucky hit. A plasma bolt clipped the hollow star's right stabilizer, sending the ship into a harsh spiral. Inside, alarms flared. Ronan swore under his breath, pulling the yoke hard left and compensating with emergency thrusters. The ship jolted, a metal scream vibrating through the hull. The Quarnix screamed. Kell held onto a pipe, his heart punching his ribs. System breach in engine wing C, the AI announced. Stabilizers damaged, weapons at 70% power. Good enough, Ronan growled. He wasn't done. Not yet. He rerouted power from life support, tapped directly into core coolant reserves, and pushed the hollow star harder than it had ever flown. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was his rage made metal. He swooped under the third hunter ship and fired a barrage of heat-seeking micro-torpedoes straight into its underside. The detonation was massive, sending spinning wreckage across space, slamming into one of the reinforcement cruisers just as it entered the field. Ronan didn't flinch. 2 down. Who's next? Jorvin watched the screen in horror. He's going to destroy every damn ship we send. Not if we send something he helped build, someone muttered. Jorvin paused. That thought chilled him more than it should have. Get me the code for Project Echelon. Gasps erupted around the bridge. Sir, that project was sealed after— I know what it was sealed after, Jorvin snapped. Unseal it. Project Echelon. A Dominion prototype designed to counter rogue agents with unpredictable minds. It had been mothballed after the Drazul Rebellion, because everyone was too scared to activate it. Ronan Vale had designed the first version. Now it was going to hunt him. Back in the hollow star, the ship leveled out. Kell looked up at the ceiling like it was the sky. Why are you really helping us? He asked softly. Ronan's reply came after a pause, slow and heavy. Because once I did worse than what they're doing now. I built the guns they're pointing at you. I trained the men pulling the triggers. Kell blinked, unsure what to say. I thought I was protecting peace, Ronan continued. But peace built on fear? That's not peace. That's a leash. He punched the thrusters again, and as the last Dominion cruiser prepared to face him, something darker stirred in the void. Something that knew Ronan better than anyone. Something that didn't fear him. Because it was him. Once. The void around Virelis 9 was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard of Dominion metal. The last of the hunter ships drifted in pieces, engines venting smoke into space, chunks of hull spiraling into the black. The hollow star circled like a wounded animal still baring its teeth, fires flickering across its scarred plating. Inside, Ronan stood at the control panel, sweat streaking down his temples. His left hand trembled slightly, something he hadn't felt since the Drazul front. Fatigue was sinking in, but adrenaline shoved it aside. Then the AI's voice cut through the cockpit like a blade. Unidentified ship entering system. Signature matches blacklisted project. ECHELON. Ronan froze. No sound. No movement. Even his heartbeat seemed to pause for a second. He hadn't heard that name in years. He'd buried it. Or so he thought. The AI continued, almost hesitant. Classified Dominion prototype. Design origin, hollow star schematics, variant 0x1, core pilot, hybrid neuro AI model, estimated threat level, terminal. Kell watched from the side screen in the cargo hold, eyes wide as a new ship flickered into the battlefield like a phantom. It didn't look like any other Dominion vessel. Sleek, matte black, with no obvious engines. It moved more like a thought than a machine. Quiet, calculated. The Quarnix leaned forward, mesmerized and terrified. "What is that?" one of them asked. Ronan's voice crackled over the intercom, low and grim. "That is me, if I'd never stopped." Project Echelon was a ghost born from Dominion paranoia, an autonomous war machine modeled off Ronan's own battle data. His instincts, his flight patterns, his combat preferences, fed into an evolving AI that could predict and adapt in real time. It was built to kill traitors like him. And now, it was here to finish the job. Back on the Red Talon, Commander Jorvan was smiling for the first time in hours. "Let's see how you handle your own nightmare, Vale." His officers watched nervously. Even they didn't understand how Echelon worked, only that it didn't report back unless the threat was neutralized. The Holostar's systems lit up in a wave of red warnings. "Incoming lock, multiple beams, it's scanning for predictive movement." Ronan gritted his teeth. "Of course it is. That's how I taught it." He shifted the ship hard to starboard, just as Echelon's ship flickered across space in a blur and fired. No missiles, just concentrated kinetic pulses. They ripped across where the hollow star had been a second ago, carving glowing streaks into the void. No mistakes, no wasted shots. It wasn't just shooting where he was, it was shooting where he was going to be. Kell was thrown against the wall as the ship twisted violently. Sparks erupted near the power conduits. The lights flickered. "Is he losing?" one Quarnic asked. Kell didn't answer. He didn't know. He only knew the fear in Ronan's voice when he said that name. Inside the cockpit, Ronan's jaw was locked tight. "All right," he muttered. "You want to fight? Let's see if you're still me." He cut main power for half a second, long enough to vanish from every scanner. Echelon didn't flinch. It turned immediately, tracking him with blind precision. "Damn it," Ronan hissed. "Still thinks like me. Still knows me." He dove straight down into the gravity well of the ruined moon below. The hollow star shook as gravity pulled at it like claws, but he didn't pull up. Not yet. Echelon followed. It always followed. The difference was, it didn't feel fear. Ronan did. And fear taught you things no AI could replicate. He spun into the crater line of the moon, flying lower than any sane pilot would dare. Static scraped the hull as the ship kissed the terrain. He skimmed through the debris of wrecked satellites and broken towers, man-made and alien alike. Echelon kept coming, mimicking every move. "Come on," Ronan whispered. "Follow me a little further." He knew what was hidden under the moon's surface. He'd seen it long ago during reconnaissance. A dormant fusion field, unstable and unmonitored. The Dominion never bothered to clean it up. That was their mistake. Ronan activated the hollow star's core disruptor, an illegal weapon. A very illegal weapon. "Hey, Echelon," he muttered, opening a direct link. "You ever wonder what instinct feels like?" No reply. The AI didn't talk, didn't taunt, but it followed, right into the field of volatile fusion vents. Ronan released a shot, not at the enemy, but at the vents. The moon cracked. Plasma erupted from the ground in a tower of violent light. The blast hit both ships, but only one had reflexes. Only one had fear. The hollow star veered up at the last possible second. Plates melting, stabilizers screaming. Echelon took the hit head-on. The system went dark. For a moment, all that was left was silence and static. And then, a ping. "Echelon unit status. Critical damage. Reboot in progress." Ronan's face paled. It wasn't destroyed, just pissed off. The hollow star limped from the blast zone, smoke pouring from its side vents, and warning klaxons blaring through the narrow halls like a funeral dirge. Hull integrity was at 38%. Life support was barely hanging on. And worse, Echelon wasn't dead. Ronan's knuckles were white on the yoke as he stared at the cracked monitor. The static cleared just enough to show the shadow of the enemy ship rising from the glowing wreckage of the moon's surface. Bent, scorched, but alive. Reboot complete. Adaptive protocols engaged. Echelon had learned. It wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. Inside the cargo hold, the Quarnicks were panicking. Kell grabbed the railing as the ship jolted again. Another system shorted out nearby, sparking dangerously close to one of the younger Quarnicks. "What the hell is that thing?" one of them cried out. Kell turned to the others, his voice shaking but louder than before. "It's not a thing. It's him, or what he used to be." He paused, eyes narrowing. "It's what they turned him into." They all fell silent after that. Back in the cockpit, Ronan yanked open a hidden panel. Inside were 2 worn-down injector tubes and a neural interface jack. Military grade. Illegal in half the galaxy. He stared at them, the ghosts of old missions whispering behind his eyes. He had sworn never to use them again, but he'd also sworn never to run. "AI," he said aloud. "Give me a live link to Echelon's signal processor." The ship hesitated. "Warning. Direct link will expose hollow star systems to predictive intrusion." "I know. Do it anyway." A click, then a faint buzz. A connection formed. One way, he could hear it, not in words, not in voices, just thoughts, patterns, calculations, and underneath it all, something colder than logic, something personal. Echelon didn't just want to win, it wanted to erase him. "You're not just running my code anymore," Ronan whispered. "You're remembering." The Dominion hadn't just made a copy of him. They'd made a shadow that hated him. Maybe because it remembered the pain, the betrayal, the orders he gave that ended lives. Or maybe because it believed it could have done it better, without the guilt. The hollow star's AI flickered again. Echelon launching internal attack. Worm signature detected. Defense systems failing. Ronan's console dimmed. His systems were being hacked, slowly, like acid eating through steel. "Too smart to fight," he muttered. "Too fast to outrun." Then he glanced at the emergency override. Manual controls. And something clicked. It wasn't about outgunning Echelon. It was about being human again. He unplugged every system tied to automation. Let the hollow star go dark, blind, and mute to outside code. The AI screeched warnings, but he ignored them. He pulled on the neural interface and slammed the injectors into his arm. Pain bloomed. And then clarity. The ship wasn't a machine anymore. It was his limb. Every wire, a nerve, every pulse, his own heartbeat. Outside, Echelon hesitated. It had no target, no system to read, no algorithm to beat. Just a man, flying blind. "I see you now," Ronan growled, his voice low. "Let's finish this like we should have years ago." The hollow star dove straight toward Echelon. No evasive moves, no stalling. A suicide charge. Inside the Dominion command ship, Jorvan watched in disbelief. "He's lost it. He's going to ram it." "No," one officer whispered. "He knows what he's doing." Just before collision, the hollow star veered sharply, scraping past Echelon's hull and releasing something. An electromagnetic spike tuned to Ronan's old neural code. A virus. One he made as a failsafe, buried years ago when he first designed the prototype. The Dominion never knew. But Echelon remembered. And that was its flaw. "Intrusion detected. Identity mismatch. Protocol conflict. Error." The enemy ship froze. Its weapons went silent. Its thrusters flickered. Inside, its synthetic brain split in half. torn between who it was and what it was now. Ronan whispered through the link, "You're not me. Not anymore." Then he fired everything. Plasma cannons, EMPs, torpedoes. The hollow star unleashed every last breath it had left, pouring fire into the stunned ship that had once been his echo. Echelon cracked open like a black egg. Flames burst from the core. It didn't scream, didn't beg, just ended. Silence returned. Space swallowed the sound, the violence, the history. Inside the hollow star, systems blinked out. Power drained. The lights dimmed until only the red glow of the emergency beacon remained. Ronan slumped forward in his seat, barely conscious, burned out from the neural feedback. But the enemy was gone. He had killed the ghost. Kell ran into the cockpit, skidding to a stop when he saw the state of the ship. And Ronan. "Are we alive?" Ronan opened one eye. "Not yet," he croaked, "but give it a minute." The hollow star drifted in the stillness of space like a dying beast. Her hull was scarred, scorched, and punctured, but she lived. Barely. Systems remained dark, save for a few flickering lights that pulsed like a heartbeat refusing to quit. Life support coughed in and out, and oxygen levels dropped dangerously close to critical. Inside the cockpit, Ronan stirred with a grunt, his fingers twitching as the neural jack hissed and popped. He yanked it out with a gasp, blood trickling from his nose. The feedback nearly fried his brain. His vision danced in double and his muscles screamed, but he smiled. He'd won. He'd killed the thing that had once been his shadow. Kell stumbled in, carrying a medpack and a half-functioning datapad. He dropped both on the floor and kneeled beside Ronan, checking him over with trembling hands. "You shouldn't be alive," Kell said, voice rough and wide-eyed. "I'm too stubborn to die," Ronan muttered, "and too pissed." Kell glanced at the cracked viewport, at the glowing wreckage of Echelon still drifting in the distance. "You really destroyed it?" Ronan nodded slowly. "It's gone. But we're not out of this yet." He was right. Before he could say more, the hollow star's long-range comm system crackled to life, forcing out a garbled signal filled with static and Dominion encryption. "To the traitor Ronan Vale and all surviving entities aboard the outlaw vessel, you have violated High Dominion Code 77B, executed unsanctioned weaponry, and destroyed a classified asset. Surrender immediately or face planetary-level extermination." Kell's stomach dropped. "Planetary level? What does that mean?" "It means they're sending something worse," Ronan said darkly. He stood, staggered, and leaned heavily against the console. "They'll glass this system if they have to. The Quarnix, this moon, every survivor. Dominion doesn't tolerate losses like this." He looked Kell in the eye, especially not when it makes them look weak. Kell glanced toward the hold where the other Quarnix were gathered in silence. They didn't understand the message, but they felt the tension in the air. The end wasn't far behind. "What do we do?" Kell asked. "We can't fight them again. You said yourself the ship's nearly dead." Ronan turned back to the controls and tapped into the last reserves of the hollow star's AI. "Not fight," he said. "We run. But not like cowards. We run to survive, and to make sure this story spreads. If the galaxy hears that the Dominion bled today, they won't be so afraid tomorrow." He activated a pulse beacon. It was old pirate tech, designed to bounce a distress signal off every rogue relay in the outer systems. Untraceable, untouchable. It would tell the story of Echelon, of the battle, of a human who fed the enemy fire. "But they'll track the signal," Kell said. "I know," Ronan replied. "That's why it won't come from us." He set the beacon to transmit from Echelon's wreckage, using the same Dominion signature it had carried. It would look like a Dominion broadcast gone rogue, a leak from inside. That alone would cause panic, paranoia, and in the Dominion, paranoia killed faster than bullets. As the beacon launched and disappeared into the dark, the Holostar's engines began to sputter back to life. Ronan rerouted auxiliary power and shut down every non-essential system. The ship groaned, lights blinking wildly, but it moved. "Where do we go?" Kell asked. "To the outer ring, past the trade lines. There's a station out there run by ex-Dominion deserters." He paused. "They owe me." Kell snorted. "Who doesn't owe you?" Ronan smiled grimly. "Most of them want me dead. That still counts as a debt." Behind them, alarms chimed softly. Another ship had entered the system. But this one wasn't Dominion. It was smaller. Civilian class. A scavenger vessel. It must have picked up the explosion and come to loot. Ronan flipped a switch and charged the one remaining weapon system. His body ached, his vision dimmed, but he wouldn't take chances. The vessel hailed them. A voice came through, scruffy, accented, cautious. "This is the trader ship Grindstone. We saw whatever the hell that was." "You need evac?" Ronan hesitated. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know how to answer. He looked at Kell, then at the flickering systems, then at the cold wreckage of Echelon. "Yeah," he finally said. "We do." A pause. "Docking in 5. And hey, whoever you are, that was one hell of a light show." The comms clicked off. Ronan sank back into his chair and let out a long, shuddering breath. "Let's get the hell out of here before the Dominion brings the storm." The Holostar turned towards the waiting vessel, trailing smoke and glory behind her. For now, humanity had survived. But the fire had just started. The Grindstone wasn't much to look at. A rust-colored hunk of scavenged alloys, bolted together by desperate hands and fueled by ambition rather than regulation. But to Ronan, it was salvation on borrowed wings. As the Holostar docked, creaking and groaning like a dying animal, a hiss of pressure sealed the two ships together. The airlock opened with a shudder, and fresh, recycled oxygen flooded in. Kell helped the Quarnicks shuffle through first. Their eyes were wide with fear and wonder, their steps hesitant as they passed into the unknown. Ronan followed last, every muscle screaming in protest, his body still recovering from the neural feedback. His fingers brushed the frame of the Holostar's airlock one last time. He didn't say goodbye, because ships like that didn't die. They just became part of a bigger story. Inside the Grindstone, the air was thick with grease, sweat, and old machinery. A wiry man in a patchwork flight suit greeted them, one eye replaced by a flickering implant and a stub of a cigar clamped between his teeth. "Name's Rusk," he said, squinting at Ronan. "And you? You're the son of a bitch who just punched the Dominion in the teeth?" Ronan didn't deny it. Rusk grinned. "Good. I hate those bastards." They made a quick jump out of the system, engines groaning under the strain, but they cleared the Dominion patrol range before any counter-response arrived. For now, they were ghosts in the dark. Kell slumped into a bunk, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "We're alive," he whispered. "I didn't think we'd make it this far." Ronan didn't answer. He sat quietly in the dim-lit mess bay, staring at a scratched data pad with a flickering map of Dominion-controlled space. The Grindstone's nav systems weren't top tier, but they didn't need to be. They had something more valuable: anonymity. "You've got people chasing you now," Rusk said as he slid a tin of synth coffee across the table. "Dominion doesn't take that kind of loss lightly. That wasn't just a rogue AI you blew up." Ronan looked up. "I know. They'll say it was a malfunction, a tragic accident. Clean it all up like they always do. But that beacon you launched, it's already out there. Channels are buzzing." Ronan allowed a grim smile. Good. But, Rusk's voice lowered. Not everyone's celebrating. Some people liked the order the Dominion brought. Some people believed in the machine. Ronan's hand tightened on the tin. I killed a ghost, he said softly. Now the cult wants revenge. Rusk nodded. There's already a bounty on your head. Big one. Triple if you're brought in breathing. Figures. Ronan pushed the map aside. They always come for the ones who set the fire. The conversation was cut short by a sharp chime. Incoming transmission. Priority code. Black Echo. Rusk frowned. What the hell? That's old military encryption. Ronan stiffened. His face went pale. Black Echo wasn't just any code. It was his code. He stepped toward the console and input a long-forgotten sequence. The screen lit up, static fuzzing into clarity. A face appeared. Pale skin, sharp eyes, black uniform, no insignia, a voice that hadn't aged in decades. Commander Vale, or should I say, traitor. Ronan didn't flinch. Director Voss, you're still alive? Of course. You think we'd let you destroy what we created and not prepare for contingencies? Echelon was your mistake, Ronan snapped. I just cleaned it up. Echelon was perfection, a mind free of guilt, fear, weakness. You were the failure, Vale. You blinked, you doubted, you hesitated, and we replaced you. Ronan's voice dropped to a growl. And your perfect weapon failed. Again. Voss's face darkened. You lit a match, but fire spreads, Commander, and you just became our priority. We're sending the architects. Rusk paled. Number, that can't be real. The architects were a myth. Ronan's blood ran cold. Not a myth, he said quietly. They were Dominion's last resort. Black Ops enforcers. Ghosts trained to erase entire bloodlines. Voss leaned forward. You trained them, Vale, and now they're coming for their teacher. The transmission cut off. Silence filled the ship. Kell appeared in the doorway, his face drained of color. He'd heard enough. So now what? He asked. We run again? Ronan shook his head. Number running won't stop them. They'll chase us to the edge of the galaxy. The only way to kill the architects is to go where they sleep. Kell blinked. You mean, we go to them. We take the fight to the Dominion's hidden core. He stared at the stars through the viewport. And this time, we burn the whole damn house down. 3 days later, the grindstone drifted through the black veil of uncharted space, silent as a whisper. No relays, no satellites, no Dominion sensors. Only ghost signals on dead frequencies, left behind by the people who were never supposed to exist. Ronan stood on the bridge, staring at the broken coordinates burned into his memory. The place where the architects had been made. The Chimera Vault, he muttered, hidden beneath the rings of a gas giant called Virex 9. No official records, no entry logs, just whispers. Rusk leaned over the nav console, frowning at the impossible readings. There's nothing on sensors. That planet doesn't even show on star charts. It wouldn't, Ronan said. The Dominion erased it when they built the vault. All that's left is a place the stars pretend doesn't exist. Kell stepped in, still pale from the shock of their last transmission. He hadn't slept much, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw Voss's face. Cold. Inhuman. So what do we do when we get there? Kell asked quietly. This isn't a fight we can win, Ronan. These architects, you trained them. You said they're monsters. They're worse, Ronan said, turning to face them. They're the part of me I left behind. He walked to the weapon locker and pulled out the one thing he'd sworn never to use again. A sealed case with a red emblem burned into the alloy. Inside, nestled in thick foam, was a weapon older than most wars, the Last Rites Protocol. Kell stared at it. What the hell is that? Ronan locked eyes with him. Insurance. This is the only thing that can break the vault's neural seal and shut it down from the inside. But it comes at a cost. What cost? Ronan looked down at the weapon, at the biometric pad that would only recognize him. It'll burn my mind out, every neuron fried. No thoughts, no soul, just a blank shell. Kell stepped back. You can't seriously plan to use that. I don't plan to, Ronan said. I expect to. The room fell silent. Rusk finally spoke. Then we make it count. One trip in, no return. If you're going to erase a piece of history, make sure it stays dead. Hours later, the grindstone pierced Virex 9's orbit. The gas giant loomed like a sleeping god, swirls of emerald clouds and storms that stretched continents wide. Hidden inside the outer ring was a dark shape, invisible to scanners but clearly visible to the naked eye. The vault. No lights, no signals, just a perfect cube the size of a city, floating inside death. Ronan suited up. Not in Dominion black, not in Rebel gray, just plain armor. No insignia. No lies. I'm going alone, he said. Kell stepped forward. Like hell you are. Ronan grabbed his shoulder. Kell, listen to me. If they see you, they'll use you against me. You're leverage. Bait. You think they don't know about your father in Sector 8? Or your sister on the mining colony? Kell's face fell. They'll twist you until you break, Ronan continued. I trained them to do it. You want to help? Then stay alive. Stay out. Tell people what happened here. He turned to Rusk. Get this ship out of orbit the moment I enter the vault. No hesitation. Rusk frowned. What if you need extraction? I won't. Ronan stepped into the shuttle bay and entered a single-man pod. It hissed shut around him like a coffin. As he launched toward the vault, the atmosphere turned thick, green storms flashing across the surface of the gas giant below. Lightning danced like cracks in reality. The vault loomed ahead, still dark, still waiting. The pod slammed into the structure with a deafening clang. Ronan stepped out onto metal as old as empires. He passed through doors that opened without sound, as if the vault knew him, as if it had been waiting. Inside, it was cold. Steel walls lined with cryocells, thousands, each one containing a still figure, shaped like men, but not quite. Pale skin, neural ports in the spine, no emotion, no dreams. The architects. Ronan walked deeper. His boots echoed through the silence of death. In the center chamber stood a throne. On it sat one figure, alive, awake, watching. You came, it said. The voice was metallic, but unmistakably human. Of course I did, Ronan said. I built this hell. The architect stood, taller than Ronan, built like a predator, but its eyes, they were Ronan's eyes, cloned, replicated, cold. We've evolved, it said, and now you must die. The doors sealed behind him. No escape, just fire. Ronan raised the last rites. This time, he whispered, I'm not running from the monster, I'm killing it. And he charged into the dark.